Hello, I'm Laurence Westgaph. I'm NML's historian in residence, and I'm here today with Joanne Anderson, who's Liverpool's first female and black mayor to be elected in the city's history. Hi, Joanne.
Hi, Laurence.
I just wanted to ask you, in light of the city's history in terms of its black community, the role that it played in the slave trade, what inspires you in your political viewpoints?
So I feel an amazing sense of responsibility to represent black people, not just in our city, but in everything that I've done. You have the added burden that you don't just do things for yourself. You recognise that you are a role model, and if you stand up and make yourself be counted, it impacts on other black people. But really what inspired me politically, has got to be said, is the black women in America who have, taken over whole states, and they've all stood up during campaigns to make sure the black vote is counted and make sure that they're represented.
I mean, I think that's quite interesting in light of Liverpool's unique history as the capital of the slave trade. So Liverpool's mayors throughout that entire period, both during the 18th century and into the 19th century, many of them were either owners of slave ships, owners of plantations in the Caribbean, or people who bought and sold the goods that enslaved people produced. And you being elected now in a city that was so influential in creating the black diaspora, I found particularly powerful. And I think that the position that you're in gives us a chance to highlight that history, but also do something about the legacies that history has created in terms of inequality.
Yeah, absolutely. I know you've had some interesting thoughts around, as black communities, not really being a black middle class. And I think some of your relatives, I know my relatives, had houses on Falkner Street and they were compulsory purchased, and we've got no legacy, we've got no wealth in our communities, and they will have been decisions that will have been made with the local authority in the past. So actually being in the driving seat and being able to drive equality, making sure policies, well, surely it wouldn't happen in this day and age anyway, but making sure policies affect black communities in a positive way, that gets me up in the morning, gets me ready for work.
I'd be interested to know, in light of that, do you see yourself as a bit of a role model for both women and for black people?
You can't help yourself being a role model. I think any woman in a leadership position is a role model for other women, as are for black people. And we had to talk the other day about the impact of black men currently, and I think I don't particularly see myself as a role model for men, but certainly as a black person, I know that me being in this position will make black people think, well, maybe I can do it too.
So what inspired you then to pick up the gauntlet and go for the position of elected mayor?
To represent the city, I seen our city in crisis. I seen that I had an ability to be able to help in a crisis, but also any involvement I've ever had politically was about standing up and representing our communities with such low numbers, really, in leadership and in politics, that because I felt I should. So,
as you mentioned, you were an activist before you ever took up a political role. What was it that inspired that activism?
So, as you know, I'm from a very political background in terms of my mum growing up with Maria O'Reilly and Pat Harvey, and my mum working with the black community in Liverpool to even help me with my identity as a child. Obviously my mother is white, so my background has always been political. I've been on demos from a young age. I remember events like the anti-Nazi League demonstrations, Rock Against Racism, all those things. So as a child, I've had a political upbringing to the extent I wanted to get away from it by the time I was 16. I couldn't eat an apple without my mum asking me if it was from South Africa. I literally couldn't do anything. Everything could be done in our house was political. So when I was 16, my mother sent me the Isle of Man, where I was the only black girl on the island. And you would think that would be an awful experience, but actually it was it was kind of so rough in Liverpool at the time. It was nice to just go and be a teenager and not worry about anything. And I was 18 when I come back, and I went at 19, I went to a trade union meeting, and someone was talking about what was happening in the Isle of Dogs and how black people were getting persecuted down there. That inspired me to become a trade union activist. And as I say, I've always had political opportunity the trade union movement really tried to push me into becoming a local councillor, and that was at 1920. And I was representing people from across the country at TUC Racial Relations Committee. I just felt there was a slight hypocrisy at the time. And so, my values around social justice, I don't have to belong to a party, I don't have to be a trade unionist to apply them. I applied that in my career by working in the fields of equality.
So basically, off the back of your upbringing with your mother, she obviously politicised you.
Yeah.
And through osmosis, I suppose, in many ways,
Yeah.
because it's just kind of in your DNA.
Yeah.
Now, how do we engage with a younger demographic? How do we get people who didn't have the privilege of growing up in such a political household? How do we get them engaged in kind of activist change?
It does. It always worries us, doesn't it? And, where's our next generation coming from? I did get a lot of the young vote, and young people have spoken to me. I don't know whether it's because I've got an 18-year-old and maybe I just have access to that, that age group because of him. But I think there are young people are thirsty for some political leadership. So there's some ideas that we'll have here that we'll try to do. I want to engage young people on the mayoral debate, but I want to engage young people on everything that we do. If I had a lot more time than I have, I would like to do lots of kinds of discussions, political discussions. I've mentioned in the past I used to love the Speakers Corner in London in Hyde Park, but you've told me something about Liverpool that I didn't know, about an Arthur Dooley statue. I'd like to see us. We're a very political city and we've got much more political awareness than anywhere else, but you'll have someone debate a whole political opinion with you and then say, I'm not political, and walk away. I need people to take that leap and go, well, I either identify with a party or I don't, or at least become engaged. So yeah, if I have more time, I'd like to do lots of events, but I'm happy to talk to any young people at any opportunity, particularly about politics.
Now, in light of that, you focused on young people. Do you feel that there's the necessity for a black agenda in Liverpool to kind of highlight some of the disparities that have been acknowledged in the past, but have maybe are not really been left on the back burner, so to speak? So if you think about reports that have been written, the Gifford report always comes to my mind, where it said that the experience of black people in Liverpool has been uniquely horrific. Is there anything we can do in the city specifically to kind of address some of those issues?
I'm probably the wrong person to ask, because obviously I've been working in race equality the whole time. So I'm kind of sick of reports. I want action. The previous mayor commissioned a task force, and they've done reports into education, and they're working on that to get the schools to sign up, because as a local authority we don't actually have any control over the schools. It's up to the schools what they become engaged in. So I think that report into education will be useful, but I don't think there's any evidence needed around the disparities. I think we've got enough evidence. I'm a big fan of positive action, and even though I haven't experienced positive action for myself, I think we need to take more radical action to readdress the imbalance.
So can you maybe explain for viewers what you mean by positive action? I
think the term's been quite diluted in terms of anything that's good to engage people in recruitment, for example, like outreach work, or putting on adverts that you welcome a diverse range of applicants. I suppose I think of positive action in the sense that we used to have in the council in 2000, when we had 5 times the amount of staff and 5 times the amount of jobs. So we're not going back there with a big programme. I think it was 600 or 800 positive action trainees, but it was a 12-month training programme that led people into a career. It was a training programme that didn't guarantee you the job, but nearly everyone I know who went on a positive action programme, they mightn't have ended up working for the council, but they ended up in a career. And I think that was really successful. And we as a city, we just haven't done that again. So I'm trying to work with the region that we do a positive action programme, particularly for black teachers. And I want to see in my lifetime a change in the really low numbers of black teachers in the city. And I recently done, before I was mayor, I think engaged with about 34 young black people, and when you ask them about leadership and role models, they talk about the teachers. So it's just a massive gap for that age group. I also think I've benefited from having black role models myself and leaders. I think you can, you know, the term you cannot be what you cannot see. So when I was in the trade union movement, Bill Morris was the General Secretary. When I worked in the Crown Prosecution Service, Baroness Scotland was the Attorney General. I've worked in environments where I've seen black men and women as role models and as leaders, and I think, you know, that's important to your development.
Oh, absolutely. I'm really interested that you said that, because one of the other issues I see in Liverpool, just going around the streets myself, is there's a real lack of visibility.
Yeah.
And a lot of people who come here will say, well, where are the black people? Because usually they're not in the city centre. Is that something that you can identify with?
Absolutely. I mean, you know, there's people who live in the city that don't know black people live in the city. So if you do want to see black people, you go to Lodge Lane, that's where black people are. But I've seen, Jordan, just coming out of lockdown, I've seen, you can tell when black people are from Liverpool, you can tell whether they're from London or Birmingham. I don't know what that's about, but you can identify where the black people are from. I love that, you know, as we're opening up again, I see lots of black people visiting the city, but I'm really saddened by the thought that they think everyone in the city is white, or, you know, black people don't live here. So yeah, even the meeting I've had this morning with the Business Improvement District, how do we change that diversity? And in terms of that visitor experience and being much more authentic about who we are, how do we make sure what we see is reflected of our communities?
I'm going to come back to history now. I know you're dreading it for me to say this, but I'm going to say it in terms of looking into the future. Personally, from a historian's perspective, I think that a lot of the events that have taken place in this city over time have really shaped both the way we see ourselves as a community, but also how the present is kind of represented or presented. Now, in the future, how can we kind of address the lack of black representation within the city from both a historical viewpoint, i.e. if you know, most people don't realise that there's been a black presence here for 300 years, and as we just mentioned, you know, if you come into the city centre particularly, you don't see any black people. So how can we kind of address that in very practical
I think you'd ask me to jump forward and look back and see what action I can take in the meantime, which, you know, I'm happy to do. I think we're quite fortunate in, you know, especially as people, we have got a very strong sense of identity, Liverpool-born blacks. And I think that is a really good, it is a good thing. But I think, you know, black people have also felt that there isn't a future for them in Liverpool and have moved elsewhere, and, you know, called the brain drain, don't we, where we have to go to other places to seek opportunities. I want to ensure that black people feel there is a place for them in Liverpool, that opportunities are available to them. And I think a couple of things will help. I think during COVID, it was highlighted so impactfully, the inequalities within society, and because of George Floyd's murder, race inequality was highlighted in particular. So it was interesting, I spoke to someone in London yesterday who said that they've employed someone from Liverpool and they would have to normally make them move down to London, but they don't have to. So I think, you know, that's going to help in terms of people not having to move away to succeed. I certainly did. I worked in London for 10 years, even though I still lived in Liverpool. So in terms of action, I think positive action, making sure there's opportunities, making sure that we use our influence as a council. So even from yesterday, I campaigned on a manifesto that said, you know, there will be a triple lock to our decision making, that we would, you know, make sure equality and diversity and inclusion is impacted, social impact, environmental impact. I can work and influence everybody we work with to take that on that triple lock as well. So, you know, each day I think there's new ideas, new ways of doing things, but of course I've been working for this for 30 years. I really would like to see a change, considering I'm in such an influential position.
Now, I'd like to maybe finish by mentioning, you know, you're only a single individual. You know, people have put a lot of their aspirations on your shoulders. How do you respond to that?
Well, it's time bound as well. So I need everyone to step up. You know, I'm not, you know, I stepped up, I need you to step up, but actually I do need people to be more politically engaged. There's no legacy if, you know, after 2 years I'm not elected again, and then we go back to the same old. And, you know, we've been here, haven't we, over time, where we've had to step forward and then we sometimes have a step back, or sometimes 2 or 3. So I need other people to say, you know, well, she can do it, I can do it, and get, you know, reach out for what they believe in as well. But it's certainly in the political arena, you know, we've still got a really low number of councillors councillors. I do need people to step up and be involved. We can only change by taking action, and I won't be able to do it by myself. You know, I need everybody else on board.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Laurence.
It's been lovely talking to you,
And you.
as always. Thanks.